Greetings, friends.
My name is Steve Kelsey.
And I'm Ron Leota, and this is The Roles We Play, the show about the roles we play in the games we love. On the show today, we have a very special episode where we will be talking about the brand new Low Armor Cast, an actual play D&D podcast that Steve and I are a part of. So without further ado, let's start the show. All right, so if you're watching, obviously things look a little different than you're used to.
We're so far away.
Yeah, we actually have some guests with us today. So you know Steve and I, so let's go ahead and introduce our guest. I'll actually let you guys do that yourselves since you're competent and awesome adults and probably can do those sorts of things. So we'll start with this fine gentleman here.
Hi, my name is Aaron. I play Scratch on the game that we're here to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
You're in recording for episode mode. You're just like, if I say my name, I need to remember to say my character's name. And class. Oh fuck! I've stepped into this. We're not recording the podcast yet. For the listeners,
that is
we're
exactly
doing this literally before a recording session where we're going to record a couple episodes of the podcast in advance. So yeah. But your name is Aaron.
Yes, I'm Aaron. Hello.
I'm Kelsey Steven, software developer, D&D player, and I play Merritt Grimclank.
You don't need to introduce your character.
I'm a goblin with no ancestry. Did we need to do our descriptions? Of our characters?
You know what I love about what's happening over there too is that Aaron had asked like, "Where's the camera?" And then Kelsey and Aaron are doing very good jobs at
Well, so
looking
the
at
problem is that
camera.
if I'm like actually behind my microphone all the way, I definitely cannot. I'm definitely completely blocked.
which is fine. That happens sometimes. You can always lean to the side if you like.
That's what I was doing.
But what I was going to bring up is you're definitely nailing looking at the camera far more than Ron and I do.
Oh, I try to ignore it.
Yeah, because this is a podcast first, and I just use it for dying exposure content.
Oh, I look so shifty. I've watched an episode of us doing it, and I look so shifty because I'm always like avoiding eye contact. I look like to the viewer like I'm avoiding eye contact with him and constantly lying. I'm like, so like I really like board games and
No, meaningful eye contact from this couch.
That's the creepy couch.
Welcome to the prolonged eye contact cast.
All right, so Ron, you said the name.
Low Armor Cast.
Low
baby.
Armor Cast. Low Armor Cast, aka the Low AC.
The Low AC.
Which is where you can find us. Oh, by the way, where you can find us on social media at hashtag the Low AC, at the Low AC on Facebook and Twitter. I just registered those this morning. Before this.
We launched this literally tomorrow as of this filming.
Yeah, patreon.com/lowarmorcast will be the Patreon. I did all that work in the AM of this morning. But yeah, so I don't know.
Let's start by let's tell a little bit about the show.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk a little bit about what makes it different from other actual play podcasts, because obviously there are a lot out there. Why start a new one? And I think we have some things to offer that might be a little different. So to start, Steve is our game mommy who writes and runs this awesome game in a land called The Fold. We all play diminutive style characters. I am a Failing, which is like a halfling. Is diminutive the word I'm looking for? Yeah. Okay. Like a halfling, but with a tail, because I want to be special. Aaron's a tiny cat girl, and Kelsey's a short-yoked goblin. And the idea is that we are effectively three children in a trench coat trying to fight in what is effectively high fantasy power armor in a tournament that our actual champion, who we are the pit crew for, has up and disappeared. And now we have to continue doing these tournaments a la the style of A Knight's Tale meets something akin to BattleBots or Real Steel. I think that's a good...
Yeah, so that's pretty much the synopsis of it. And so now, Ron, you mentioned your character was a Failing. What's your character's name? A little bit about their background.
Oh, well, I play Tama, who is a failing bard. I wanted to do some interesting stuff with this character in that I wanted to play a bard in the, I wouldn't say least stereotypical way possible, but try to avoid the super tropey stuff that people do in D&D. Number one, my character is not horny all the time and is picky, which is bizarre. And there's a lot of circumstances where I can see like, oh, I could bard this super hard, but I'm not gonna. One thing I love about this character is that Steve has given me a lot of free reign to write the background and land I come from, which I've actually based on Polynesian culture, which is my grandfather comes from American Samoa. So it meant a lot to me to get to have a character who has a little bit of part of myself in it, who has a tattoo that's, I'd say, almost cooler than mine. And he's a fun character. I love playing him. He's lighthearted with a lot of angst towards adventurers.
Kelsey, you look like you wanted to say something there.
Without cutting in, just that I feel like Aaron and I were just roasted for volunteering that information.
Right?
Just jump right in.
You volunteered it before the game mommy asked.
He didn't say mommy says.
Mother, may I?
I dare you to keep doing that with me and how you feel about it.
I don't know. How much does it irritate you?
Strangely, not as much as I thought it would.
We'll revisit that later.
Yeah. That's for the after show Patreon discussions. The after show, just Kelsey and I. So let's hop over. I'm going to punish Aaron because he was the first one to make the mistake. Let's hop over to Kelsey. Kelsey. You already gave us your character's name and their species, but let's go through that again and give us a little bit.
Merritt's a little goblin fighter. I tend to play like halflings, dwarves, other diminutive characters normally, but I really wanted to play a fighter because I pretty much always am like ranger, some kind of mage, like distance casting or like bow, or basically anything that's not melee. So I was really excited to play a fighter, especially like intending to go towards battle master, unless like something happens where I'm like, well, that just doesn't make sense for the character, because I want those fun maneuvers.
And what is Merritt like? What's his attitude?
Merritt's kind of like a little bit of a fuckboy. Like he's someone who like had some trade like from his family growing up, but did a lot of like tournaments that like lots of like tests of physical strength and stuff like that, and had like a real middle class upbringing. So he's pretty much like, I haven't like gone anywhere, done anything like important, seen anything really, but like I'm strong.
Your character's father is one step away from closing a community center and therefore making you an 80s movie villain.
No. He just makes stuff for those people.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
He makes very high-priced trinkets for the people doing all of that.
Gotcha. So community center profiteering, I hear.
Mm-hmm.
It's always
gonna accidentally like find out how to make a real cool grenade and to like end up in war profiteering. It'll be a journey.
It'll be a real journey. No war profiteering.
And last and certainly least.
Yeah, you wish.
Want to reintroduce your character's name, background, species, all that stuff.
Why would I want to do that already?
How long's your bet? How long's your bet with Shubs that you'd keep him on this cast?
I don't know. I'm being paid monthly to get him out of the house.
Okay.
It's its own reward, really. But yeah, so I play Scratch. She is a tabaxi artificer.
Whichever
Get in the
way.
comments.
in the comments.
Can
find
someone
out.
submit a clip of you properly pronouncing this? Doesn't D&D Beyond have like recordings?
Oh,
You
I'm
can
sure
play
it
a bunch
does.
of
Yeah,
things.
it does. It absolutely does.
But I
I
refuse
thought, like,
now to
Matt
look up what
Mercer
artificer is actually pronounced.
There's a conversation in amongst the community deeply about the pronunciation of artificer and
I don't
artificer.
doubt it.
Yeah, like there's a strong, because spelling wise, artificer makes more sense. Like when you look at it on a page, but for some reason, artificer sort of just became the normal for a lot of people. And then there's that side group that pronounces it artificer, which I hate because it is not an artifact or whatever. Artifact.
Artificer.
Like at first
I
I was
might
kind of
just
like why would you get like an internet argument over the pronunciation of that word? And then I'm like, you know what? I'm actually not going to complain about that because there's way worse hills to die
That's
on.
it, yeah.
That's a good
the,
one.
The
Go ahead.
answer to that is because it's the internet and there's no hill not worth dying on, basically.
Going forward, anytime anyone says whatever, like says artificer, like whatever you do as your character to you, your character needs to correct their pronunciation to one of the others. It doesn't have to be the same one.
I'm an
Just
artificer.
constantly
Artificer.
sowing
And then
discord.
the first time I have an NPC go, artificer, you're like artificer.
Yeah, it's an artificer. And it's pronounced tabaki.
Ketchup? Catsup?
So yeah, I'm a tabaki artificer.
I hate it.
And yeah, she basically used to be a mercenary, would run with one outfit or another, whatever, would put food in her belly and
Scritchies in her warm, soft fur.
yes. She wouldn't describe it that way, but yes. Anyone who's willing to give her scritchies in her warm, soft fur. And then she found some gainful employment with the guy who
for a little bit of lore, she found some gainful employment under Rupert Morningsun.
that's the guy.
Lord of Haza.
That's an
Atlantic
in-character.
something.
Lord of Haza.
She knows Lannick, and she knows that the rich guy
is Morningsun.
Yeah.
And then works directly with, sort of for, but sort of not for, Lannick, who is the champion combatant that goes into the champion armor that existed before Scratch, but Scratch made significant improvements to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now we're kind of on the setting up the premise portions of the show. So some of the stuff we went over, like the general description, is what's actually just being set up right now. And at this point of recording, we are approaching actually doing some stuff, maybe in some armor. Who knows? But yeah, it's been a good time, and I got
Three more pie eating contests.
3 more pie eating contests.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
So what are some of the things you guys think make this actual play D&D podcast a little different than other ones? Not necessarily better, not necessarily worse, but just like what's going to differentiate and make you think this kind of stands out in a sea of lots of people playing D&D?
Well, from my perspective, the concept alone kind of sets it apart. It's unlike most of the D&D podcasts that I've listened to, and it's unlike any of the games that I've ever played. So it's most of the games that you like play in or see, it's like a group that gets together and they have some goal or purpose or whatever, and they set out to do that. But in this one, it's more like we're just folks. And like we have our positions and like we have things that we're doing, but for the most part we're just trying to survive in this world. And like we've got a job and we're doing it. And in the course of doing that job, something happened, and now we're trying to deal with that. So
Yeah, one way I've described it to people is we are playing normal people with a very interesting job that just got much more interesting due to circumstances outside of our control.
yeah,
And that I think alone is a great setup, especially when you add these like almost. I mean, here's the thing: some people kind of get turned off when they hear the word sports. As a non-sports fan, I still find this very entertaining, the sports elements of this, because there's a lot of elements of professional sports and that kind of how much it's become so important to the, you know, cultural zeitgeist. And obviously this world is so important, these champion battles and these various sports that people play. And I think getting to see that not only from like just a player perspective, but also just being a big nerd who's not into sports, getting to be kind of inside that world and how a nerd interprets that world. It turns out to be a lot of fun. I'll just say that.
Definitely.
Yeah, like on the same vein of us just being normal people, like that's one of the things I really like is like, yeah, Scratch has worked with mercenaries before, but none of us are heroes or adventurers or like even like just paladins or clerics who are still like called forth by something to do something. Like we're just like normal ass people.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, like ex-mercenary who's now a mechanic. You know, privileged kid who fixes things and kind of needs to go somewhere to help somebody. And here's a good
get
job.
out from under the feet of the family business.
And like I'm playing the failing musician who signed up to be some dude's herald because I guess that pays the bills.
Oh, I also just want to point out for anyone who isn't already aware, failing spelled Feyling, not Fai.
Yes.
Because I keep hearing it that
There's
way.
been no pun
So,
made.
I should
of
say
failing
he is
versus
also
failing.
he is a failing musician in the fact that he is not like making his entire living just going around doing bar gigs. I don't know.
I wanted to cut in here. I think that one of the big differences between this and other D&D actual plays, podcasts, and games is that there's a big chubby white dude with a neck beard in it, and I just don't see that enough.
Right?
And I'm glad to fill that role. Finally, give some representation to my people.
I mean, to
Like,
be
fair,
fair,
real
a lot
unicorn
of
right
the
there.
D&D stuff I watch specifically doesn't.
To be fair though, to be fair though, I will say our DM is the only cis white dude on the podcast.
Yeah, I try. I'll hold it up for my peeps.
He's holding it down for the oppressed
Representation
minority.
matters,
to be completely Republican, because you'll hear this in the podcast. We do, or at least I do, and I know that Kelsey does. Aaron's listened to it too. There's Matt Arnold on Dungeons and Daddies is absolutely in the category of this. But that's what's great about podcasts is that you don't necessarily like. It further disconnects you. I like watching Dimension 20. I've watched some live of the High Rollers stuff from Yogcast and some other live presentations, but it's kind of nice in a D&D podcast setting because it is more like book reading on an adventure, simply because you just hear the voices. You don't see the people, so that never informs your aesthetic for the character in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, this will be one of the few times the actual podcast appears on camera that isn't going to be like some con thing.
Yeah.
For the most part, we will be doing at least low armor cast. The Pit Crew game we're playing is all just audio only. Steve does a bunch of editing and adding in some sound effects and music to accentuate things. We record on the same rig. We record the roles we play on. And overall, the technical aspect behind it is really nice because you have people, a couple of people working on it who have actively worked in music and sound production. So it right there, it gives us kind of a leg up on being able to sound far more professional than most groups starting out who just bought their first studio condenser mic and don't know where to put it in the room.
Yeah, for sure.
Which we've obviously are in a super treated room. It is so funny how good the sound is that comes out of this room that has no business having any kind of decent sound.
It's why I use this setup. It's why I use these types of mics as opposed to condenser mics. This allows for you to record anywhere, whether that be I have taken this rig to hotels to do live podcasts out of a hotel room, panel room, and I've done recordings in little halls, restaurants, wherever, and I can usually get pretty competent sound no matter where I am because these just don't pick up as much. Which isn't something you always want, but it works for this.
Let's talk a little bit about histories with tabletop Dungeons and Dragons specifically, or other tabletop games. I don't want to go too long into it, but just a little bit to give people a bit more about you as people in background and stuff. And Ron and I don't need to really dive too deep into this. You can watch episodes of the roles we play, or listen to them, or
listen to 6 years of a podcast I did specifically about role-playing games.
It's like, we've covered this, but for Aaron and Kelsey. So let's start with Aaron. Aaron, what's your history in Dungeons and Dragons? Other than dropping die all the time.
Yeah. So the very first pen and paper game I ever played was Shadowrun when I was in high school.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. No, it was a lot of fun. My friend Richard got me into it, and I didn't really get it at first for a long time. But we had fun with it, and then I didn't really have the attention span to sit for a campaign, so we played a couple sessions and then moved on to other things. But then a few years later, the first time I started really playing was when I was in the Air Force, and I made a new friend, and he was like, "Hey, you want to come play this game?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And it was some homebrew Fallout inspired setting. It was post-apocalyptic and stuff, and that was just a blast. And that was when I started having my first experiences of we start playing Saturday afternoon or whatever, and then we stop playing at Sunday 10 a.m. We're barely awake.
Wow, that's a marathon session, man.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was good times. And then, after that, I started getting more into other games. I started learning how to play actual Dungeons and Dragons itself, other stuff. Started running a few games. These two right here were in one of the longest running games that I played. And now I'm here.
I just wanted to anecdote really quickly. The first role-playing game I ever played, this was back in the FASA days of Shadowrun. So this was back when it was still considered the official prehistory of Shadowrun. My first game was Earthdawn. Which cool. Was a game. It was a high fantasy game they released. That was what was the super precursor to Shadowrun, which has now completely been split apart because that got bought by a different entity that guy bought, and now it's no, that never existed. Yeah. About the same level of canon as Hunter the Reckoning is the Exalted is the precursor to Hunter the Reckoning.
Yeah,
that much of a connection. Not much. Sorry.
Oh no.
Yeah. For me, there's definitely been years of gaps here and there, but I've pretty much been playing D&D. I honestly haven't played much other RPG systems, but various forms of D&D about since I can remember. Just because my dad's such a huge nerd that we all grew up playing, and some of my favorite young memories and things that hang around from that time is the talking frying pan my brother had that was his prized possession, or that my mom has a real my mom can't put up with people being assholes, so if people were being a dick in the campaign, she'd just start attacking, she'd fuck up party members, she didn't care.
She just rolled to attack?
Yeah.
Wow.
My mom will fuck you up if you're a dick in game.
You just tell some poor guard to shut up, and your mom just stares into your eyes. Roll initiative.
It's intense.
But lots of games off and on. I think most recent, pretty much since college when we met, has been the most consistent I've played D&D since young teenage and below.
And I think we all met through, I would say, would we all meet through you basically?
Well, so
we met through Aaron.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys met through Aaron.
So Aaron and I went to college together.
Okay.
The reason Kelsey and I are spouses is because of Aaron's D&D game, really. If it hadn't been for the game that he was running, there wouldn't have been an excuse to see each other as regularly, and things sort of evolved from there. The reason that Aaron and I are as close as we are is because of Aaron's D&D game, because it made me realize he'd moved to Kirkland, which is a little town where he no longer lives. But he moved, like, I had always thought he was in Seattle. And that's not super long, but it was like 30 minutes. And like,
and then where are you going to park in Seattle?
Yeah.
Yeah, and everything like that. And then somebody informed me, it was like, no, he's like 5 minutes away. And I'm like, oh, fuck, then yeah, I'm in.
Like the other side of the block from Shire 2.0.
Yeah, you were so close. You were in walking distance, in truth.
Yeah.
But in practice.
In practice, you were in my car distance. But
yeah, no, it's actually, it's pretty funny because that's the reason we became close and like we were friends. But we knew each other for a few years before that because of my roommate Delmore, and Delmore was high school friends with Steve.
Okay.
And I lived with Delmore for a bit, went to some house parties, and I remember a couple times they were like, man, it's a shame we don't get to see Aaron too much more often, and then I moved to Kirkland.
So I met Steve, I've said this on the podcast before, but we met at RadCon. We got put on a panel together about nerd music. And at the time, I had listened to his band, but didn't know I had listened to his band because I didn't have any of Death Star's albums. But
still
on the
doesn't,
way,
still doesn't. 0 Death Star albums. Good work, Ron.
I have like 4. It's awkward because you're my friend now, but like the Villain of the Day series is still one of my favorite like series style songs ever. Villain of the Day Volume 2 is still in my like jams list, and then I hear your voice and I'm like, but that's Steve, which is a whole new thing for me. But anyways, we met at RadCon and doing this geek music thing, and I had realized I was like racking my brain. I'm like, I think I've heard you guys before, but I know I don't have any of your music. And you're like, oh, well, we did a thing with Mega Ran, and I'm like, oh, the Haunted House song that I listened to like literally on the drive up. Yeah, okay, yeah, no. I literally listened to you guys like yesterday. So we got to kind of loose acquaintanceship after RadCon, and then I booked them for a gig doing Northwest LARP Fest was a thing I was a board member for a couple years. And that's how I met you, because I booked your wife Shubs to come play, and we all ended up hanging out. We hit it off great. And then
that was a fun day.
Yeah, when you were like, yeah, I want to do this podcast with Aaron and Kelsey, and I'm like, I've always wanted to be friends with you guys. I guess I could do that. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yay, friends.
Yay.
And then the insecure 14-year-old in me comes out on the podcast. It's good.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm already married, because it's not an attractive feature, I'll tell you that.
But
it can be charming. You know, that kind of vulnerability.
I think we're probably. I have no idea how long we're doing.
We're getting close on time. So before we go, do you guys have anything you would want to say? If somebody was like, all right, you got 30 seconds, sell me on this show. What's your elevator pitch?
It's more of a me job, but okay.
You guys got to promote it too, because I'm going to promote it. I'm going to promote the show.
30-second elevator pitch. I don't know. I'm bad at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm like it's kind of like a lot of what you gave earlier. So, you know, 3 kids in trench coat operating armor meant for someone much larger for them, while trying to still put food on their table and figure out what the fuck's going on.
Yep.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Watch Vincent Adult Man solve a mystery, basically.
It's I'm really. I mean, we've been talking about this a little bit, like hinting at it off and on. We haven't really said much about it on the show because we didn't have hard details. But now that we do, we wanted to rush out and tell everybody. Please check out the show. It is going to be launched on December the 7th. And then the next episode will be right away on December the 21st. That will put us on our schedule for every other Monday. You will get a brand new episode of Low Armor Cast for free by whatever service you want you access your podcasts on. Like, you know, your iTunes, your Stitchers, you just want to go straight to the website. We'll have it all for you.
Yep.
There'll be a dirty link, just like an MP3 off some website if you just want to.
If you go to angelfire.com/e/dying_of_exposure/low AC/the real low AC front page.html, you will find an MP3 link of every episode.
Somehow, if you use the Wayback Machine, you can find GeoCities.
I'm gonna put all this up on SoundCloud. Yeah.
If you go back to 2010 and hit up MySpace page for a band called Press Start to Rock, I will be uploading them there. Now, I'm going to do you one better than that, Ron. I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to make it so there's not one episode on December the 7th.
No.
There's not 2 episodes on December the 7th.
Oh.
There will be 3 episodes uploaded on launch day for you to listen to back to back, assuming you like the first one. Like, if you don't like it, then you don't have to listen.
I was gonna do a bit and be like, "Oh, you're gonna put 2 up." I didn't actually know we were gonna put 3 up, so that's news to me.
We're gonna put 3 episodes. It's just how the editing worked out.
Oh, fair enough.
We're gonna put 3 episodes of the podcast up. To get it kick-started off, or Patreoned off, I guess is the newer thing.
We'll get you all past some side questing.
Yeah, to warm you up to what it's gonna be. And then
the third episode is all poop jokes.
And so, I mean, every episode there's a thing you'll hear it. You'll learn what that's about.
You'll get there,
and you'll be able to get there via if you go to the lowarmorcast.com. Initially, that's going to redirect to probably a subpage on Dying Exposure. .com that will just go there. You'll also be able to follow us on social media on the Low AC on Facebook and Twitter and hopefully Instagram, assuming it's available. If not, we'll update you. And then most importantly, if listening to us once every other week is not enough for you,
if it's not enough,
you can sign up for the Patreon, which will be day and date launch day on the 7th. Patreon.com/lowarmorcast, and that will be where you can support the podcast. Certainly listening to it, you're not required to it, but what you will get initially is, for subscribers of the Patreon, there will be a after talk episode for every episode that'll be on alternating Mondays. And so it'll be Monday episode, next Monday after talk about that episode, and so forth. And then once a month, there'll be other bonuses. Like once a month, there'll be some sort of like bonus content, maybe a one-shot, maybe a Q&A, maybe a like an interaction of some sort. And then eventually, if there's interest, we'll do things like Discords, things of that nature. And yeah, you'll be able to get more involved and support these wonderful players. I'm already fully supported, so I don't need support, but they could use some support. So check out the Patreon. The benefits and levels will be listed. I'm narrowing them down and making them feel worthwhile. But yeah.
And just a call out to my buddies who like Leota role-playing and the stuff I've been doing. If you want to support me, this is actually a really great, tangible way to do so. All my LARPs, everything I've done up until this point has been not-for-profit. All my podcasts, I've never had a Patreon. I've only ever asked for money to replace broken equipment. So if you want to support, I know people out there have actually asked me, how can I support you monetarily? This is how you can do it. We share the Patreon after our costs are covered. This is a great way. This podcast is something I truly believe in, and I want to really see do something big. So even if you can't afford the $1 a month tier, I totally understand. Money is tight, and frankly, sometimes a cup of coffee is better than an extra talkback podcast. But help out, and if you can't throw a buck in, send it to your friends. If you got a friend who you think would enjoy our irreverent, goofy humor mixed with some pretty solid D&D in a very unique setting, please tell your friend. That's how you can support us. That's how you can support me, and I would really appreciate it. I hope that wasn't too much of a guilt trip. I feel a little yucky over-advertising myself.
It's fine. I'll over-advertise a little bit more. You can also support us by going and reviewing us on various podcast sites. That is how podcasts get discovered and recommended. If you are a listener of other D&D actual play podcasts, and then you listen to us and you review us positively, the algorithm looks at what you listen to, finds other people that listen to that, pays attention to your review, and sends it their way. And so that is another ultimate way that you can support us that costs you no extra dollars, other than the fact that in a capitalist, post-capitalist society, all time is money, and so any time you spend doing something is devaluing that time for yourself earning income. Thank you.
And I will say one thing about the talkback episodes that are a lot of fun. Yes, it would be extremely boring to listen to a podcast about a podcast you listened to the week previously. So those, while we do get into a little bit of our thoughts and feelings on things that went on during the game, it's also a lot of stories, having fun, a lot of laughter. So if you ever wanted to get to know any of us better, or just know kind of the behind-the-scenes wackiness and why people are giggling at certain things that it seems odd they might be giggling at, that'd be a good way to get involved and become a little more part of the show. Because I know I'm the type that when we do get fans, I'm going to love you way more than you love me. It'll be a very one-sided relationship. Send me your address. One step too far?
For our top Patreon tier, you provide us your address and we'll come visit you.
Oh, no.
I promise I'll try to hang out with you until the point that you don't want to be my fan anymore. Like, God, I thought he was cool, but dude, you are needy. I'm your fan. You're needy.
So with that, I think that's a good end of this episode. Is the threat of stalking if you give us enough money to stalk you. That's a real weird, strong consent threat, though. Because, like, it's threatening, but if you donate that much, you're giving consent to it. So there you go.
That's the thing. I'm like, and we know what our fans are into. I mean, like, that's some people's kinks. We'll find out fast.
We'll find. We got a good research team.
Yeah,
Just put it that way. Got a lot of people very competent with computers.
a lot of cats. They'll also help. But yeah, I think that's about it.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. And if you want to continue to support the roles we play, give us a listen, give us a like on Facebook. Check us out on YouTube at Dying of Exposure. You can go to therolesweplay.podbean.com if you want to just pick the episodes up there. Anything you can do to tell people about the show is always super fun. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to our amazing guests for hanging out on the roles we play and giving that shout out to Low Armor Cast. Check it out December 7th. And now we're going to go record a bunch of Low Armor Cast. I am Ron. For Steve, Aaron, and Kelsey, I'll play myself out.